They say gods don't walk among men. But what if one did? Not with lightning or wings. With silence, willpower, and scars too deep to name. No powers. No mercy. Just a mission. One man against the fall of night. Every night. That's Batman. Not a hero. Not a savior. A weapon forged from trauma and pointed at chaos. A stoic wrapped in Kevlar and pain. Call me Gage. Call Braddock if you're checking the files. I'm cutting signal through WGAI 13. My beat? History. The kind written in blood and verified in bone. But tonight we're stepping off the ancient battlefield into something that doesn't belong in the history books. Yet. See, I was deep in the archives. Marcus Aurelius still fresh in my head, working through field-tested philosophy when Panels, our comic specialist, walks into my workspace. Guy survives on caffeine and deadlines, but he knows his territory. He drops a dossier on my desk. Batman symbol right there on the cover. You want real stoicism? He says. You want discipline forged in trauma? A code that holds when everything breaks? I looked at him, then at the file. This is fiction, Panels. So was Achilles, he says. Didn't stop Homer from teaching us about honor. He had a point. Fiction doesn't mean false. Sometimes it means distilled, concentrated. Truth without the clutter of politics and propaganda. This isn't about superpowers or fantasy. This is about what happens when storytellers take ancient philosophy and dress it in modern armor. They create a character who embodies everything the Stoics taught, without ever mentioning their names. Batman is fiction, but he's also a teaching tool. A modern meditation on discipline, justice, and what it costs to hold the line when no one else will. Today we study a different kind of warrior. A modern Stoic who never read Marcus Aurelius but lives every principle he wrote. If this transmission reaches you, if the dark night steadied your aim when nothing else could, lock onto the signal, share the frequency, send it to whoever's fighting their own war in the dark. This isn't entertainment. This is reconnaissance. A field report from the front lines of the human condition. You want more? Signal boost. Mark the moment. Drop coordinates in the digital void. We're not building an audience here. We're building a network, a coalition of those who refuse to break. Bruce Wayne died in Crime Alley. What crawled out of that blood-soaked pavement was something else entirely. 8 years old, watching his parents gunned down for pocket change and a string of pearls. Most children break under that kind of trauma, shatter into pieces that never fit back together right. Not Bruce. He turned that break into a blueprint. See, trauma does one of two things. It destroys you, or it forges you. Bruce chose the forge, chose to become something that could ensure no other child would watch their world end in an alley. But here's where most people get Batman wrong. They think he's about vengeance, about anger, about a rich boy with too much time and too many toys. They're missing the point entirely. Batman is about discipline, about the deliberate construction of something larger than human weakness, something that can function when emotion would paralyze, when fear would break, when rage would blind. The Stoics called it preferred indifference. Things that don't matter to your core mission. Pain doesn't matter. Fear doesn't matter. Even death doesn't matter if the mission continues. Bruce Wayne took that philosophy and built it into armor. Literally. Look at his training. 7 years. Traveling the world. Learning from the best. Not just fighting. Not just detective work. Mental discipline. Physical conditioning. Emotional control. He didn't just want to be ready. He wanted to be unbreakable. The League of Shadows tried to teach him to kill. He walked away. Because his code wasn't about becoming a monster. It was about becoming something better than the monsters he fought. I won't kill you, he tells the Joker. But I don't have to save you. That's not mercy. That's precision. Surgical application of force. Enough to stop the threat. Not enough to become the threat. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." Batman lives that. Every night, he fights psychopaths and never becomes one. Battles corruption and stays incorruptible. Faces the worst humanity offers and refuses to lose his humanity. But the real stoicism, it's in the preparation. The endless, grinding preparation. Alfred finds him in the cave, 3 a.m., working through forensic evidence, or training, or planning, or all three at once. When did you last sleep, Master Bruce? Sleep is for people who don't have a city to protect. That's not bravado. That's commitment. The kind of commitment that turns a broken child into something unbreakable. He studies every criminal, every technique, every weakness. Not because he's paranoid, because he's thorough. Because when you're the thin line between order and chaos, you don't get to half-ass the preparation. The Stoics talked about memento mori. Remember, you will die. Batman takes it further. He remembers his parents died. Remembers what happens when good people let evil act unopposed. So he doesn't let it act unopposed. Ever. Look at his contingency plans. Files on every hero, every villain, every potential threat, including himself. People call it paranoia. I call it professionalism. When the stakes are Gotham City, you don't leave anything to chance. The Justice League questions his methods. Too dark, too harsh, too willing to cross lines they won't cross. But when the world ends, when the impossible happens and the unthinkable becomes real, they call Batman, because they know he's prepared for the unthinkable, because he's been living in the unthinkable since he was 8 years old. His greatest enemy isn't the Joker, isn't Penguin or Two-Face or any of the costume freaks. His greatest enemy is himself, the part that wants to quit, the part that wants to rest, the part that whispers, "You've done enough," fights that voice every night, wins every night. Because he knows the moment he stops, the moment he rests, the moment he lets his guard down, Crime Alley happens again, and he'd rather die than let that happen. That's Stoicism, real Stoicism. Not the pop philosophy version that talks about accepting what you can't control. The version that says, I will control what I can control. I will prepare for what I can prepare for. And I will never, ever stop. Batman doesn't have superpowers. He has something better. He has will. Unbreakable, uncompromising, unstoppable will. And that's a superpower anyone can develop, if they're willing to pay the price. I've studied warriors across timelines. Soldiers who held impossible lines. Leaders who carried impossible burdens. Philosophers who faced impossible questions. And Batman? He belongs in that company. Not because he's real, because he's true. I've been in the cave. Not literally. But I've been in that headspace. The place where you prepare for the worst, because you've seen what the worst looks like. Where you train beyond exhaustion, because you know exhaustion kills. Where you build contingency plans for your contingency plans, because hoping for the best is a luxury you can't afford. Bruce Wayne had money, had resources, had advantages most people never see. But advantage doesn't forge character. Pressure does. And the pressure that forged Batman would have crushed most men. He chose to be crushed into something harder. I've seen real operators. The kind who don't talk about their work because their work doesn't survive discussion. They recognize Batman, not the costume, not the cave, the mindset, the willingness to be the thing that stands between the innocent and the predator, to absorb punishment that would break normal men, to keep functioning when functioning seems impossible, to never, ever stop. That's not fiction. That's a choice. A choice anyone can make. Maybe not with the same resources, maybe not with the same training, but with the same commitment, the same refusal to break. Batman is what happens when someone takes the worst moment of their life and uses it as foundation instead of letting it be their grave. When they turn trauma into purpose, pain into power. When they decide that their suffering means something only if they use it to prevent suffering. That's why he works. That's why the symbol endures. Not because he's impossible. Because he's inevitable. Because somewhere, in every city, there's someone who's seen too much. Lost too much. Been broken too completely to ever be fixed. And they have a choice. Stay broken. Or become something else. Batman chose to become something else. Something harder. Something that could hold the line when no one else would. And that choice? That's available to anyone willing to make it. I didn't build this transmission alone. Panels, our comic correspondent, helped me frame the blueprint, and he's got something to say about it.
Panels here, multiversal comic correspondent, chaos incarnate, and the guy who alphabetized his long boxes by emotional damage level. Twice, once by trauma, once by tone. Gage hit me with a question. A good one. Where do we see Batman's stoicism clearest? Didn't even let me stretch first. Just launched like I'd been waiting my whole weird little life for someone to ask. You want stoicism in a cape? I said. Start here. Spoilerish warning. Not full recaps, but if you haven't read these, you've been warned. Batman. Year 1. This is the origin but not the sanitized one. Bruce returns to Gotham, like a blunt instrument wrapped in bandages and bad decisions. He's green, alone. He fails, a lot. But that's the point, he keeps going. Keeps refining. This is where the code is born. Not in triumph, in failure. Stitched together with willpower and stitches. On Halloween. One of the all-timers. 12 issues, 1 murder a month. Serial killer called Holiday is dropping bodies, like it's a calendar event. Bruce digs in, doesn't lash out, doesn't burn it all down. He investigates. He waits. He endures. That's Stoicism, choosing patience when rage would be easier. This book defines Detective Batman. Batman. Ego. Now we go inward. This one's a psychodrama. Bruce vs. the Bat. He literally confronts the monster. He built the persona he hides behind. It's Stoicism as self-mastery, not punching out villains, confronting the voice in your own head and saying, "You don't get to drive." Short but devastating and criminally underrated. Batman. Venom. Yeah, that Venom, not the symbiote. The drug. Bruce gets addicted to a super steroid trying to save a little girl. He thinks strength will solve it. It doesn't. He spirals, breaks. Then he locks himself in the cave and suffers through withdrawal alone. Why? Because shortcuts are easy. Codes are hard. He chooses the hard road, and he never touches it again. Batman. Endgame. This one's cosmic. Joker unleashes hell. We're talking citywide madness gas, mythic stakes, end of the road stuff. Bruce holds the line, even when he knows it's a suicide mission. And the kicker, he dies for that code. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, literally. No fear, no rage, no flinch. He smiles and steps into the abyss. These aren't bedtime stories. They're field manuals in 4-color. Philosophy with splash pages, case studies in control. Clarity, and the refusal to break even when it'd be easier. This was Panels. It was a blast, tagging in with Gauge Guys, got signal strength, conviction, and war poet gravitas. But if you want more, drop a comment. Tell us if you want a full breakdown of any of these stories. I'll dig through the archives and crack open the panels, page by page. No spoilers spared. No trauma unexamined. We're just scratching the cape here. Take it away, Braddock. And for the record, the voices in my head say it's canon.
Panels cut through the noise. Help me see what was already there. A Stoic with a utility belt. Myth that mirrors the oldest truths we've ever written down. If this cut through the static. If something in the shadows felt familiar. If you've ever stood guard when everyone else was sleeping, then maybe it's time to patrol deeper. There's more signal in the dark. More voices that chose to hold the line when everything fell apart. More examples of what happens when philosophy meets pressure and doesn't break. Amplify what matters. Share what cuts through. Not for clicks, for connection. For the chance that someone who needs to see this sees it. WGAI 13 runs on memory, and memory only survives transmission. This was File 6, The Dark Knight's Code. Batman, Detective Weapon, Stoic. Next time we track another signal, another warrior, another voice that refused surrender. This is Gage, Cole Braddock, signing off from the edge of forever. Keep your thoughts sharp, your patrol steady, and your mission your own. Always.